always enjoy the chance to drive down to Red Rock country and present in person, but this year we'll make do with this, and maybe next year things will be a little more back to normal. So I do have the Zoom Q&A window open, so if you do have questions and type them in, I'll be able to see them. It's nice to see some familiar names on the attendee list. So hopefully can see some of you again in person soon. So tonight I'm going to talk about the outreach expansion that we have been planning and making a lot of progress on despite all the changes in the world over the past year. So we'll talk a little bit about what new programs and facilities we opened before the pandemic hit, what we've been doing while we've been closed. Fortunately, we've been able to make a lot of progress with some of the outdoor work and some of the planning for content in our new visitor center. And then actually I'll talk a little bit about how we have responded to the pandemic itself, shutting down, how we've the strategy we've developed for phasing our reopening, because as you know, our outreach program involves very large crowds of people getting together, albeit a lot of it outdoors, but quite a bit of it indoors in the visitor center. And we just can't do that right now. So I do want to talk a little bit about how the strategy that we've adopted to reopen in what we think is a careful and sensible and scientific way. And maybe that'll be of benefit to others who might be struggling with the same thing. So to get started, let me get to the right window here. There. So first of all, I've spoken to KSB before about the Lowell Discovery Telescope, except back when I talked about it last time, it was probably called the Discovery Channel Telescope. As you know, this is our 4-meter telescope facility. Perhaps some of you have had the opportunity to tour it. Early last year, we renamed it, and that was in collaboration with Discovery. What we had found was the name Discovery Channel Telescope was kind of a branding nightmare. Nobody had any idea it had anything to do with Lowell. And I was regularly getting emails even from people here in Flagstaff, from NAU and from city staff, asking if I knew who runs Discovery's telescope out there. So we contacted Discovery maybe a little tentatively. We didn't know how they'd react to renaming it, but they were actually very receptive because they've evolved too, and they're not just the channel anymore. They rely on a wide variety of media. They know that a lot of their younger and up-and-coming audience tends not to get their information from the channel. They get their information from social media and Instagram. So they wanted to evolve their relationship as well. This is now called the Lowell Discovery Telescope. We are running our telescopes. We shut the LDT down right after COVID hit, but it's now back up and running. We've got protocols in place to operate all of our telescopes safely. So the research observations are proceeding full speed right now. One thing the LDT did was to transform the institution. It's a $53 million asset. It greatly expanded our scope, expanded the size of our staff, and as they sometimes say, change begets change. And as we began looking at what we wanted to do programmatically, how we wanted to raise our profile, and some of the financial equations, it became clear that an expansion of our outreach programs was going to be necessary, and not an incremental one, but actually a major one. So this has gone in multiple stages, and the first of those I can actually show you, and maybe before everything closed down, some of you had a chance to come up to Lowell and see this, our newest fully operational facility, the Giovanni Open Deck Observatory. We celebrated the grand opening of that facility in a series of events almost exactly 1 year ago. It was from late September into early October of 2019. This is a state-of-the-art facility. You can see this building here that rolls back and forth on rails. You can see the rails. That entire airport hangar-shaped building rolls forward, and that hangar door comes down and protects the telescopes. For this reason, the telescopes can be permanently mounted, which saves our staff an immense amount of setup and takedown time, and they can be hefty. As you can see, there's a suite of 6 of them in 2 rows of 3. And let's see if I can if I can do a little laser, there. Let me just ask Tom if you can see my laser pointer on the screen. Tom, can you unmute and confirm you can see where I'm pointing?
I can see it, and I can see it loud. Looks good.
Excellent. So now I can show you what I'm talking about here. So this is a suite of 6 telescopes. I like this picture because here's John and Ginger Giovanni, the principal benefactors of this facility, with our development director, Lisa Actor. In the foreground here is our wonderful educator, Jim Cole, who was in charge of selecting the suite of telescopes for this facility. So in the back, there are 2 plane wave reflectors, a 17-inch and a 14-inch. And these are connected to, they have cameras on them, CCD cameras that project images onto screens. So we can show people both images as well as spectra of the different objects we're observing. Over here, we have a Meade 16-inch. This big one, this is a star structure 32-inch, which is enough aperture actually to render color in some of the visual observations of the brighter nebulae. Right here is the beautiful 8-inch Moonraker refractor, which is as much a work of art as it is a beautifully functional telescope, beautifully suited for observing planets and solar system objects. And then right over here in the back, the smallest aperture, a 5.5-inch Tech reflector. It's actually the favorite of many of our educators because of the outstanding image quality and the very large field of view. It's about a 3-degree field of view. So if we want to do extended objects like globular clusters or large extended nebulae or galaxies, it's perfect for that kind of observation. So this facility opened last October to huge crowds for our public opening night. We had 1,800 people here on campus, and I was amazed at how uncrowded it seemed because the available area for all those people to disperse and do different things was so much larger than it had been before. Now, more recently, just in the early part of this year, before things started going downhill, we replaced a telescope that you may have seen if you've been up here before. This is the 16-inch McAllister telescope. It's a vintage 1960s Bowler and Chivens reflector. Very, very high quality instrument, but not really ideally set up for visual observation of the night sky. The image quality at this point wasn't that good, and the field of view is quite small. Thanks to a very generous donation from some individuals who wanted to honor the founder of their business, Brian Dyer, we now have this beautiful 24-inch plane wave reflector, sort of a bigger version of the 2 at the Open Deck Observatory, the Dyer telescope. And here's a picture of the Dyer as being shaken out. There's Jim Cole again, our outreach supervisor, Sarah Bircher here. They're testing it. And this is, as I'll tell you a little bit later in the talk, this is now in use for our gradual reopening as we're getting back into the swing of things a little bit. So this telescope was installed in the same dome up there on the East Side campus, not far from the Clark Telescope, in February. And then, of course, came March. And here's a picture I took. This was actually on the 13th, Friday the 13th of March, 2020. That happens to be Percival Lowell's 165th birthday. And I took this as I was walking home from work, and this was the day that we closed our public programs in response to what was obviously coming down the pike. We hadn't had any state level or Flagstaff level orders to close, but this was the Friday before spring break. And even at that point, there wasn't, the virus was sort of just coming into people's awareness, but we kind of worked out the numbers. And even at that point back in March, knowing our attendance over spring break and knowing where our audience was coming from, we calculated there was about a 10% chance that there would be an infected person on campus that week. And as you know, we have everybody go right up to the same eyepiece and put their faces right up to the same surfaces. It just seemed like we were the ideal place for a super spreader event. So we shut down, and I took this picture walking home from work. This was at about 5:15 that afternoon. And it got me a little choked up, honestly, because this is Friday evening. The parking lot should have been jammed with families and kids coming into the visitor center to look through our telescopes and be inspired about the universe. And it was just quiet and empty, and it was pretty heartbreaking to see, but absolutely the right thing to do. And we've been closed since, and are just starting to get back into reopening. Now, since the pandemic hit, we've been making quite a bit of progress in both actual physical construction as well as planning the components and the visitor experience for our new visitor center, which we still hope to open in 2023, sometime in 2023. The schedule actually has not slipped due to the pandemic. So I'm going to walk through some of the things we've been doing over the past several months and give you a little sneak preview of what we hope the experience in the new visitor center will be like. So first of all, one of the things we've done for the Open Deck Observatory, maybe if I go back a couple of slides, you can't quite see it there. No, it's not visible. Let me just go ahead. So we have added a pedestrian walkway all the way around the Open Deck Observatory. So the observing plaza of the Godo is right here. Here's the steps up to it. In the back, the new public restrooms that we built to accompany this, because this is pretty far from our current visitor center. And initially, this whole path right here, we set up, it was kind of like a Flagstaff urban trail system surface, a hard-packed, gravelly surface. And it didn't work. When it rained or snowed, it turned into a soggy mud pit, and it was dark, and people were having trouble with wayfinding, and occasionally people would slip. It was not a good setup. So we wrote some proposals and got some very generous donations to allow us to build a concrete walkway all the way around it. It's got these nodes on it, and I took this picture at about, as you can see, this is right about a little after sunset. We've lined the entire pathway with these glowing pebbles all the way. And right in the middle, our outreach team did a wonderful job simulating that's a globular cluster there. And the star density is just about right. When it gets fully dark, walking along this path is a magical experience. It's like walking literally through a field of stars. And not only do these two glowing paths of stones provide wayfinding for people, so you can see in the dark where the path is, but it's a beautiful experience that gives the Open Deck Observatory an extended identity and a whole new presence. So I've just been going crazy that we put this in and haven't been able to invite anybody here to enjoy it. So hopefully we'll be able to reopen generally before too long and let people see this. Since this is all outdoors, it hasn't been any problem having the contractors in to do the work. You know, they follow their protocols for safety during the pandemic, and it's all outdoor and windy, and the probability of transmission in that environment is actually pretty low. It's a pretty safe way to work. So we've been able to make progress on some of the outdoor civil construction that's serving as both enhancements to our existing programs, as well as some prep work on the roads that will lead to the new Astronomy Discovery Center. So that's kind of where we stand for completed facilities, and during all of that, we have continued both planning as well as fundraising for the Astronomy Discovery Center. And this has basically occupied us for the last 5 or 6 months while we've had all of these planning meetings, of course, all by Zoom. So as some of you may have heard, the Discovery Center, if you look carefully at the name there, the Kemper and Ethel Marley Foundation Astronomy Discovery Center. So when all is said and done, we think this facility prices in at about $35 million. In just over a year of fundraising, we are at 27. So we're getting there, and we're going to make it happen. We've had tremendous success with the fundraising for these projects. The Giovanni Open Deck Observatory went from being a twinkle in our eye to grand opening in just over 2 years. It was about 2 years and 3 months. That was about $4.4 million, and just got the funds in place and got it done, and we've got a beautiful new facility. Likewise, this is obviously a much larger scope. Sometimes I call the Open Deck Observatory the appetizer, and here you're looking at the entree. And so this is our $35 million entree, which obviously comes with a very good wine at that sort of a price point. So what I'm going to do is sort of take you on a walking tour of the site plan and what we have planned for the interior of this 3-story facility. So first of all, if you're familiar with our campus, this right here, this is an excerpt from our site master plan. This is the parking lot for the Steele Visitor Center. And the Steele Visitor Center is basically, it's right there. And so that's about 6,500 square feet. Right here is the Hendricks Center for Planetary Studies, the new Putnam Collection Center. And then right back here will be the new Astronomy Discovery Center. And that's coming in right now northward of 40,000, about 45,000 square feet. You can see the difference in the parking lots. Here's the old parking lot. Here's the new parking lot. We're going from 60 spaces to about 210. And the design plan there is, you know, we've been working with some very highly qualified consultants, and the rule of thumb they gave us for science centers, you know, if you're running sort of a discovery center of some sort, 1 parking spot per 1,000 visitors per year. Who knew? But that's what they told us. And so here we have a parking lot with about 60 spaces. And indeed, the design capacity of the old Steele Visitor Center was, you know, maybe 60 to 70,000 visitors a year. The past 3 years before COVID hit, we've been at 105,000, pushing 110,000, which explains why there have been so many nights when the parking lot wasn't empty like that other picture, but overflowing with cars circling and then leaving because there was no place to park. And it was terrible to see cars with families and kids just leaving, and there's, you know, that many more minds that we hadn't been able to reach. So we're designing here, when we pencil out the business model, to go from 100,000 to perhaps 150,000 visitors a year. In the optimistic scenario, maybe 200,000. Our goal really is to become more of a destination than merely an attraction. And indeed, what's in our sort of visioning for this is to be the premier astronomy education destination in the world. And that's admittedly maybe a high bar, but we've got an excellent program running now, and we think there's no reason we can't raise this up to another level. So now I'll take you through some renderings of the facility. Imagine that you are sort of 50 to 100 feet in the air and looking eastward, so you can see a 3D sort of plan elevation view of the facility. And here's what it'll look like. Out here is the drive-through where buses might pull through and park. The parking lot is out here, so people would walk in there. And then it's this 1, 2, 3-story facility. You can see there's a lot going on right here out on the roof. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then right back here would be the node that's leading up to the Giovanni Open Deck Observatory up in this direction. So the whole plan is designed along this roughly north-south or southwest-northeast axis that forms the visitor experience. So when you go in, to the left will be the gift shop and exhibit halls, to the right, a small cafe, and then in the center here, a big 3-story atrium. And I've got some concept renderings, and these are just early concepts of what these things might look like. So getting through ticketing and walking into the atrium in an environment somewhat like this. And what we're trying to, the story we're trying to tell here for the visitor experience that runs through the whole thing is your connection to the universe. As I'm sure most, perhaps all of you know, we are literally products of the universe, right? The atoms in our bodies can be traced right back to the primal energy of the Big Bang and back to the nuclear furnaces of long dead stars that blasted those atoms into space. The iron in our blood literally comes from long dead stars. So we are sort of star byproducts pondering how the stars work. And there's this beautiful circular self-reference and all of that. So we're trying to tell that story. And in the atrium, the idea here is to have some imagery representing the Big Bang at the top, and then this very dynamic sculpture representing the development of primordial particles and then atoms, and then at the bottom, interactive displays which will show different aspects of how those atoms have arranged themselves into different types of life here on Earth. The question is, how did we go from the Big Bang, this primordial ball of radiation, to self-aware collections of atoms pondering their own origins? That's what we're trying to run through all of this. There's actually a perfectly timed question that's come in from Lynn. Asks if, are there upcoming research projects that you're particularly excited about? The answer is yes, there are quite a few of them, but one that I'll point out, one of the new projects that's getting going at the Lowell Discovery Telescope is in collaboration with Yale University, and a very high resolution, extremely high precision spectrograph that is designed to detect Earth-like planets around sun-like stars. So we're literally looking for Earths orbiting stars that are maybe 60 to 100 trillion miles away. These are planets perhaps that could support life as we know it. One of humanity's oldest questions, of course, are we alone in the universe? I think it's tremendously appropriate at Percival Lowell's observatory, given what he founded the observatory to do, to be looking for life elsewhere in the universe. So that's a research project that's up and running that we're very excited about, and very parallel to the story we're trying to tell here. Over on the left, we will have some exhibit galleries. The two that we are planning to build right out of the gate. We are going to have a children's gallery. So this will be for the really small set. So the crawlers here in this sort of moonscape they can play in, and hopefully their parents will enjoy playing in. To the elementary school, maybe early middle school set, where we can have them experimenting with ballistics over here. What sort of trajectories and forces do you need to achieve certain orbits? We want to have a variety of exhibits that illustrate for the kids basic principles of physics and mathematics. And the philosophy here is never talk down. We can talk to kids about thermodynamics and gravity and optics and give them cool things to play with that will illustrate these concepts, certainly not using the full mathematics they would need to describe them precisely, but to give them the basic concepts behind the physics that bind the universe together, that allow atoms to form and allow this story that we're trying to tell to play out. Then for the first of the main exhibit galleries, the theme here is from the cloud to life. So we want to take visitors on a journey from the primordial cloud that formed the solar system. So this is going back 4.5 billion years or so, and explore how that leads to life. As it condenses, there are so many different threads to form here. You have to talk about the sun and how solar energy warms and heats the nebula, how chunks in the nebula condense into planets, and some of those planets are very hospitable, and some of those planets are decidedly not hospitable. And we can talk a little bit about how we are finding planets all over the galaxy with very different solar system architectures that we see in our own. So this is going to be a mix of interpretive panels as well as highly interactive elements. And this is one of the things we've been slaving away on the summer, all summer, is constructing this story and figuring out how we're going to deliver this. Good question from Karen H. How do your plans for such a large amount of increases in your building, lighting, and parking affect our dark skies law? Excellent question. In fact, over the past several years, I and my colleague Chris Luganbuehl of the Flag Dark Skies Coalition have been working very closely with the city on the overall city transition from the old gas discharge lamps to LED. I've spoken to Keep Sedona Beautiful about this before. We will be using narrowband amber LED for Flagstaff's new street lighting standard, and a lighting plan for the entire campus that demonstrates the use of good dark sky lighting is built into the whole strategy. In fact, the Giovanni Open Deck Observatory at night is illuminated by fully shielded narrow spectrum amber LED and dim red lights right by the telescopes to preserve dark sky adaptation. So we definitely want to use this as a chance to show everyone a model of how to do it right. And we'll have to figure out how to do this. We even want to have some strategically placed examples of how to do it wrong. You know, if you use glary white LED, you know, I don't know how to do that without trashing people's night vision, but we do want to illustrate the difference between good lighting and poor lighting. So very good question. So now the two marquee components of the facility that I think will really transform the experience. First of all, what we call the Universe Theater. I've got a couple of renderings of this for you. So this will be about a 180 seat theater where we can deliver 2D, 3D programs, CGI fly-throughs of the universe, all set up. You know, one of the hallmarks of our programs is to use live presenters. So we're leaving this big presentation area so we can do lectures, demonstrations. We can have programs that are very engaging personally with the audience. We're taking pains to make sure that everything is fully ADA compliant and that ADA seats have good seats in the house where people with disabilities can also have a really good experience. And this is our answer to not doing an indoor planetarium. This is not a full dome planetarium, but as you can see, there's this huge screen. Here's a better idea of what it will look like. It's a 165-degree wraparound screen. There will be another projection element on the top. This will fully fill everybody's peripheral vision, and here is sort of a computer rendering of it, you know, in action. So we're flying people perhaps on the International Space Station over the Earth. We can project the moon up here, and all supplemented by live narration and live presentation from the stage area there. Our consultants have helped us develop and design this in a way that we want it to be unique and unlike an experience people can get anywhere else. You can go to a full dome planetarium and get those shows in lots of different places. We want to be pretty unique. So what about a planetarium? Well, now we get up to the roof. So this is the third story of the facility. Imagine you've hiked up the stairs to the third floor and you come out on the roof, and what you would see is over here, there's a big sort of open area with a ramada. I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. But then there's this ramp going up to this raised platform about 8 feet high. And this is what we are calling the Dark Sky Planetarium. So this is the top of that 3-story atrium. So that atom sculpture is right below there. And again, a couple hundred seats right here, a large presentation area, and Flagstaff's Dark Skies will be our planetarium. And I love that the natural sky is an exhibit because it's low maintenance and it changes throughout the year and we don't have to do anything to it. And you know, things don't break as long as we preserve the quality of the night sky. Over here, you can see that ramada. This is sort of an open air meeting area where we could have plein air events, gatherings, lectures, you know, when the weather's nice. And since we're 50 feet up in the air, we're at treetops, and there will be nothing up here when you're in one of these programs but sky, the dark sky and the universe going by. And during the day, the panorama of the Flagstaff peaks and Flagstaff, it should just be a magical experience that we're very much looking forward to welcoming people to do. One more rendering to show you what this might look like at night. The seats of this thing, by the way, are heated in deference to Flagstaff's off-season climate and the idea that, you know, the mind can assimilate only so much as a frozen posterior can tolerate. So we want to make sure our visitors have a certain level of comfort. And in addition to the seats, we will have these deployable screens so that if we are pointing out, gee, the Sombrero Galaxy is right over there and you really can't see it with the unaided eye because it's out in the Virgo cluster and it's too far away, well, we can kind of show them what that actually looks like. These will just be deployable, very neat technology. And so hopefully this will be a marquee experience that people will never forget. So the whole philosophy here behind our thinking, all of these programmatic elements and the theater and the dark sky planetarium is as follows. We want to create, above all, just experiences of absolute wonder. And we see that all the time, you know, and I'm sure many of you, if you've done star parties, you've seen this, and somebody looking through a telescope at Saturn for the first time, and it's just, you know, and they'll say, no, you glued that onto the lens, and they literally can't believe that they're seeing the rings. Many of our visitors, I will, in the summer particularly, and when it's Milky Way season, and I'll point out the Milky Way with my laser pointer, and they don't know what it is because maybe they've lived in Los Angeles all their lives and they've never seen it. In fact, we know from light pollution maps, something like 75 to 80% of the population of the United States now lives where you can no longer see the Milky Way. You no longer have that connection to this enormous system of stars of which we're a part. So we want to inspire that, whoa, you know, wonder and awe in people. And the motivation for that then is to inspire people to be curious. Well, what is that? What do we know about that? What do we not know about that? And curiosity, we then hope, will lead to open-mindedness and comfort with the unfamiliar. I think a lot of the dogma and just digging in our heels that we see today in so much of public discourse, right, comes from, you know, the absolute certainty that we are right, no matter what the data tell us, as well as fear of what's different from us. And you know, our feeling is if we can inspire this sense of, gee, there's a lot out there we don't know. It's okay for things to be uncertain, okay for things to change. We can think about that and be scientific and adapt to it. And hopefully, then that leads to critical thinking and receptive thinking that would lead to better discourse and a better society. Now, I don't claim that Lowell Observatory all by our little old selves is going to change that, but we can at least change that on a you know, national or world scale, but we can do our part to try to send people off Mars Hill with that slightly different mindset that maybe leads them to look at new viewpoints. And all right, so that's kind of the philosophy that we're working from as we design these experiences, and we hope that people benefit from it. Quick, some questions coming in now. Will the whole rooftop outdoor seating area rotate so speakers can discuss any part of the sky? From Suzanne in Sedona, good question. The answer is no. That would be an absolute engineering nightmare to try to do that. And engineering nightmare means major dollar signs. We have set it up so the seats are facing south, where, you know, a lot of the interesting sights in the sky are going to occur. So the center of the Milky Way, the ecliptic is going to be over there. So people will easily be able to look east to south to north. And yeah, occasionally if there's something cool in the north part of the sky, you know, they'll have to turn around a little bit, but that's the way it goes. Next question from Lynn. What do you think are the chances of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? How many hours do we have? That's a really good question. I think, so to the question, is there life elsewhere in the universe? The scientifically correct answer to that is, I don't know, because we don't have evidence one way or the other. I think the chances of simple life elsewhere in the universe must be extremely high. We know from recent NASA missions, most of the stars in our galaxy have one or more planets. Okay, there's somewhere between 200 to 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So easily a couple of trillion planets in our galaxy alone, 200 trillion galaxies in the universe. And it seems like the conditions for simple life, such as it appears on Earth, are very high. We don't have any proof of that. Now, intelligent life, that's another matter. I mean, it developed on Earth, so there's no reason it shouldn't develop elsewhere. And it comes down to probably a certain amount of luck and the physical conditions on the planet where it's developing, as well as the behavior of the star that planet is orbiting, and certain other things like what do intelligent societies do? Do they tend to last a long time and support one another, or do they tend to self-destruct? The jury might still be out on that as far as humans are concerned. So we don't know, but I think there's certainly a very high chance that we are not, in fact, alone in the universe. And if you want to count very simple life, maybe not even alone in our solar system, because some of the icy moons in the outer solar system seem to be prime places where subterranean oceans might have some simple life. Okay, so now for the last part of the talk, I'm going to talk about where we stand right now and how we have responded to the pandemic, our strategy in just watching what's going on in the world around us, and how we are going to reopen our business, which probably a lot of people are thinking about. So we're an institution of science, and our strategy throughout has been to follow the CDC guidelines and the CDC gating criteria to use the best information from the most reputable public health agencies that we have to make informed decisions. I also consult with infectious disease experts up here in Flagstaff. As some of you may know, we have the North Branch of TGen, the Translational Genomics Research Institute, which has been on the front line of sequencing mutations in the COVID virus and running COVID tests. Dr. Dave Engelthaler, their CEO, I'm in regular touch with him, as well as with Dr. Ann Newland of North Country Healthcare. She's an MD and CEO of North Country Healthcare. And so, we bounce our strategy off them. Does this make sense? Are we on track here? Are we not? And so we're following the guidelines and getting expert advice. We're also going to apply common sense and try and make scientific decisions, but also pragmatic ones. You want to be cautious, you want to be safe, you don't want to go overboard. So here's how we're handling it. This is, you won't be able to read all of this. It's just copied. It's a screenshot straight off our website. So you can go find this on our website. But basically, as you may know, the CDC identifies 3 phases of reopening. And we likewise are reopening in 3 phases synced to the CDC gating criteria. And so we are doing virtual programming right now. The little green dots mean we're open. Right now, we are in phase 1. Because as far as I can tell from my position as an astronomer, not an epidemiologist, that's where Arizona is right now. As you can see, as we go from CDC phase 1 to 2 to 3, we progressively reopen. So right now, we're just going with these very small, exclusive premium programs at the Open Deck Observatory, the Clark and the Dyer telescopes. These are groups of 10 or less. We ask that they be cohabiting or co-traveling people who have been affiliated with one another, so we're not mixing different groups that might mutually infect one another. And then as we get to phase 2, we will have more and more tours, still mostly outside, but allowing some people into the visitor center. And finally, phase 3, that's really when probably we have a vaccine in place. Hopefully this is by next spring, late next spring, and we can be fully reopened. So what I do each week, I send to the staff this set of graphs. This is straight out of the Arizona Department of Health website. Total cases, you can see we've got the cases rising again. There's a little surge coming. Very good news though, the death rate has been has been dropping. This is heartwarming to see. I always feel a little bad every morning going to the website, and I'm just entering numbers into a spreadsheet. 3, 4, 7, 8, and it's a little easy sometimes to forget that every little data point on there is a life lost, and we are all diminished by that. Positivity rate, we're tracking that. Hospital usage. This is all what the CDC asks you to track, and then we apply that to our criteria. And so on August 21st, we satisfied everything. Decreases in the incidence rate of patients coming into the hospital. Case rates were going down after that horrible summer that we had here in Arizona. The positive test rate was going down, and then the hospital, the ICU usage went down. The testing program got a lot better. There were terrible delays in testing in June and July. It's really gotten a lot better, and virtually everyone is getting test results within a couple of days. So we satisfied that. Here, to get to phase 2, this would really give us a lot more flexibility, but we're going backwards a little bit. But when I talk about being pragmatic, one thing that Dave Engelthaler and Ann Newland tell me, to get to phase 3, CDC says ICU beds should be less than 70% full for 7 days and stay there. And they pointed out, even under normal circumstances, ICUs regularly run at 60, 70, 75%. So we're watching that, and if everything else is cool and one of these numbers is sort of hanging just above a threshold, we're not going to unnecessarily hamstring ourselves. We'll try and make a sensible decision. Hopefully, we can get into phase 2 early-ish next year, and hopefully phase 3 before next summer, and can open everything up. Dave does think there should be, he's just amazed at how rapid the progress is on the vaccines, and that possibly by next spring, we will be finally starting to look at all of this in the rearview mirror. And I think we will all give significant thanks for that. So this is my last slide. This is Lowell Outreach post-COVID. We've really done our best to make lemonade out of lemons. We will hopefully by late next spring reopen our general admission programs and just have everybody come on up and have a great time. That's what we were doing before. These green things, these phase 2 personalized tours we'll be doing, the very high level premium access programs, these were types of programs and frankly price points we'd never experimented with before. And yet right now the premium access, we're sold out on the Dyer telescope for weeks in advance. So ironically, as a result of doing all of this, we are going to have a broader and more robust outreach program that reaches more people. The last one there, the STEM curriculum for kids, we want to take the curriculum that we've been doing in our summer camps and deployed to a few schools in the Cave Creek area and make that available to a broader audience, perhaps through a monthly subscription model. The time is ripe for that with so many kids homebound and parents looking for cool things for their kids to do. So this forced reboot has spurred us to think of some interesting new things that hopefully will be beneficial for us as well as for the many people that we are trying to reach. So that concludes what I had to say. There are definitely a few more questions have come in, and so let me just go through them quickly here. First of all, from Karen H. What role does the observatory play in promoting and enforcing dark skies ordinance in northern Arizona? We play a leading role in that. So I've been involved at both the Flagstaff level. We talked about how Flagstaff will be adopting a new street lighting standard that uses really exemplary amber LED standards. I've worked at the state level to sort of try to push back on the statewide proliferation of electronic messaging centers or billboards, which are very injurious to dark skies because of the horizontally propagating light. Most recently, actually, it's taken a turn from the ground to space. And I and a number of folks from the American Astronomical Society Committee on Light Pollution, Radio Interference, and Space Debris, which I'm the chair of, we've been working directly with SpaceX and starting conversations with other operators about these mega constellations of communication satellites. We could be going from, a few thousands of satellites, maybe to over 100,000 satellites if multiple operators get into the game. Most of those satellites will probably not be visible to the unaided eye, so the casual stargazer may not notice them, but to amateur astrophotographers and certainly professional astronomers, significant swaths of the sky could become unobservable because they would just be filled with satellite trails constantly. So yeah, we are deeply involved in all of that. Can I make and there was a question, let's see. Yeah, I guess there have been some concerns on development for the quality of dark skies in Sedona, where these very large developments come in. And, it's all a question of the type of lighting they choose to put in. If a development comes in and they use good quality, well-shielded, reasonable amounts of, say, amber LED, that can be the sky glow impact of that can be quite moderate. If it's more careless, if it's overlit, and heaven forbid if it uses white LED, yeah, any flavor of white LED is going to more than double the sky glow lumen for lumen relative to, say, high pressure sodium, the very common gas discharge lamps in use today. So the answer is those large developments near Sedona don't have to have a profound impact, but they certainly could. Let's see, Bill Chisholm asks, can you make a general comment, Ray, light pollution as it impacts the observatory from A, Phoenix, B, Sedona? So the answer is no impacts from Sedona. It's not large enough. And really, even out at the Lowell Discovery Telescope, we can sure see the Phoenix Light Dome on the southern horizon, but it's not so big yet that it impairs observations. The nice thing about that site is it's in the middle of the Coconino National Forest, and so there's a lot of buffer zone in the immediate vicinity of the telescope. That said, we certainly do want to advocate for communities in the Phoenix area to do the progressive thing that's been going on in the Verde Valley with all of these dark sky communities popping up. And it was, I think, an excellent development that, for instance, Fountain Hills is now an IDA dark sky community. And that's the really smart thing about how the IDA set that program up. To be a dark sky community, you don't actually have to have a dark sky. You just have to have a community commitment to good dark sky practices. So yeah, really good question here from John Petrescu. Hi, John. Do you think the huge number of communication satellite constellations will drive astronomy to a space-based science? Yeah, good question. And that's been our point to the satellite operators. There was this cheeky comment early on by Elon Musk, I think, before he really realized the impact that, well, just there's space telescopes, just go to space. So there are applications where you have to go to space, right? If you want to observe at wavelengths in the ultraviolet and the X-ray, you have to do that from space because that radiation doesn't penetrate Earth's atmosphere. The problem is, for facilities that require the kinds of sensitivity that we can get from the ground, say an 8-meter telescope, the 8-meter Vera Rubin Observatory, the 10-meter Keck telescopes, and now the generation of 30-meter telescopes, these extremely large telescopes that are just now being designed and built. You can't deploy and operate those to space for reasons of size, cost, instrumentation, maintenance. These facilities have critical science missions to perform, and they cannot be deployed and operated from space. So ground-based astronomy is and will remain essential to driving forward our understanding of the universe. And yeah, it's an interesting time to be on a light pollution and space debris committee, because this is a watershed moment, as on the ground, everybody is suddenly switching to LED because of the explosion in LED technology. And most communities don't even think about, or to be fair to them, they're probably not even aware of the various options. They just go with white LEDs because that's what they know about. That is going to dramatically increase ground-based sky glow worldwide. And now we got the satellite constellations. I want to be very clear. SpaceX, it's been a pleasure getting to know their VP for satellite operations and the engineers that have worked with us. They are not playing lip service to this and throwing the astronomers a bone. They have expended a great deal of time and effort and money to darken their satellites. As a result of their efforts, you're not going to be able to see them when they're on station. So that will preserve the night sky for naked eye viewers. They cannot get rid of them with the kind of sensitivity that we have in research telescopes, but they're trying to darken them enough so we can at least deal with the problem, deal with satellite trails and remove them from the images after the fact. So, my impression of the SpaceX folks is, they've got a mission and a goal to bring broadband connectivity to underserved areas of the world, which is a laudable goal. They also think what we're doing is pretty cool. I mean, they're aerospace people, and so are we. So, at some level, we're kind of on the same team. So we're trying to do our best to work together in what could be potentially a conflicting situation. So what's going to happen is we just released a report. You can find this on the American Astronomical website. American Astronomical website. In fact, if you go and Google it, Google SATCON1, SATCON1, SATCON1 report. And you will find an executive summary and a layperson level report, and then 100 pages of really technical stuff authored by C. Walker, J. Paul, and a whole bunch of other folks. And that was, including SpaceX folks, and that was our first attempt to understand what are the impacts of these constellations, how can we mitigate them, what can observatories do, what can the satellite operators do, what can we do in collaboration. Now we're just starting to get the gears in motion for SATCON 2. And that's probably going to be at the end of Q1 next year, probably virtual. And the thrust there is going to be much more towards policy and regulation. One of the problems we have right now, space is largely unregulated. There's really nothing to stop an operator who has the business model and the vision and the resources to launch a constellation of 10,000 visible eye satellites in a low orbit, and they're just really bright. You could get an operator who just didn't care about dark skies or astronomy. They could just do it. So we need to get some ground rules in place, and the folks at SpaceX agree. It's to their advantage. It's to the operator's advantage. I mean, imagine you have 100,000 satellites careening around, all mostly in the same orbit. You can imagine a certain amount of chaos up there. So it's definitely in everybody's interest, and we need to be developing recommendations and policy documents that are actionable by the UN, which is the international body that can actually put some weight, because this is not just a United States problem, right? SpaceX is a United States company, but South Korea and China want to launch things up there, and it's not just communications. It could be Internet of Things, self-driving cars. There's any number of applications. So we just want to get a little bit of a handle on that as best we can before the train is too far out of the station. Question, one more question came in. Yeah, are ground-based radio telescopes impacted by the communication satellites? Answer, yes. However, SpaceX and the National Radio Observatory have been working together for years on this. SpaceX actually gave up a portion of the radio spectrum that they were entitled to avoid bleeding into some of the key radio astronomy bands. So, they've made concessions to try to not impact astronomy. The optical side, where I've been working, the whole SATCON1 report, we're a little bit later to the game, because what happened was SpaceX launched that first tranche of satellites in May of 2019, and everybody was just floored at how bright they were. We were surprised. SpaceX was not expecting them to be second or third magnitude, these big trains of satellites going across the sky. And so that kind of opened everybody's eyes, and we've been scrambling to deal with it since. So I think that covers all the questions that I see in the chat right now, and we're coming up on our hour. If there are any others, I'd be happy to answer them, and certainly hope to be able to talk to everybody next year in person instead of here on the Brady Bunch grid of 2020. So I don't know if Tom, you want to come back on and see if there are any other questions or
No, I don't see any more. Oh, one just came in.
oh, no, I think that was just a great job. Well, thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'd like to thank you for a fine presentation. I'm sure everybody else really appreciated it. Had a pretty good crowd. And
Yep.
Also, I'd like to remind the folks that are listening that next month we'll be going from the stars down to Earth. We'll be listening to Barry Malice talk about the paleogeology of Sedona. So I think that's it for the presentation. But again, thank you much, Jeff. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, and everybody stay well, stay safe, and hope to see you in person soon.
Okay, bye-bye.